Hi, I'm here today to talk about face coverings and their effectiveness. There's a lot of controversy going on and a lot of false information flying around on both sides of this argument, and you have to realize that the people we're being told to trust by the media, which by media I mean everyone for the most part, is believe the scientists. Well, we have to take into account that a rocket scientist is a scientist, a data analyst is a scientist, a statistician, um, all sorts of stuff out there that isn't has anything to do with medicine is still scientists. Uh, I mean, a psychologist is a scientist, and they'll tell you about the dangers of a lockdown, but we're not listening to those scientists. So I'm just saying, listen to the scientist is not a good argument. How about look at the facts and the data? The LA Times released a report on the 20th. They published it of November of this year, saying that back in the early days of the COVID-19 pandemic, researchers in Denmark decided to conduct an unusual experiment to test the infection-fighting power of face masks, the same way they'd evaluate a potential vaccine or drug. It's because basically the health authorities did not require any kind of mask use, and these conditions made it possible to conduct the first and only randomized control trial for face coverings. Researchers recruited more than 6,000 volunteers from around the world who spent at least 3 hours each day with people from other households and didn't wear masks for their job. About half these volunteers were chosen at random to receive 50 surgical masks and were asked to wear them whenever they left their home for the next month. The other half did not get masks and served as controls. Here's where it gets interesting. Overall, 95 of the 4,862 volunteers who made it to the end of the study became infected with SARS-CoV-2, the coronavirus that causes COVID-19. That's an infection rate of just under 2%. But no matter how the researchers sliced and diced their data, they could not find a strong signal that the volunteers in the mask group were more protected than their counterparts in the control group. This is published by the LA Times. And I think what bothers me the most about it is instead of saying, wow, that's interesting information or it's not what we expected, they simply said that not enough people are wearing masks. Well, if you're going to do the trust the scientist angle, you could at least word it that you need a larger sample group. Period. I mean, come on. But the title of the LA Times article is "Face Mask Trial Didn't Stop Coronavirus Spread, comma, but it shows why more mask wearing is needed," which is very, very interesting. Duke University did a whole bunch of digging recently, and they did experiments with different kinds of masks to include this kind of covering. The gaiter goes around like a sleeve around your neck, covers your face up. These have been found to be actually worse than nothing at all. I will share this article as well as the LA Times article. This one is from CNBC, covering a Duke University study. But the neck gaiter, which was made of polyX spandex material, performed the worst in the study, actually producing more particles than speaking with no face covering at all. We attribute this to the textile breaking up those big particles into many little particles, said Dr. Martin Fisher, chemist, physicist, and study author. They tend to hang around longer in the air. They can get carried away easier in the air. So this might actually be counterproductive to wear such a mask. Now, you can say, well, then don't wear that kind of mask. I don't know how many people are noticing, but the pictures at every store, every supermarket, everything has different kinds of masks that they're going to accept inside, and this is on the list. This is acceptable, which makes me believe that just makes people feel better to see this, because the study's out saying this is more likely to make you sick than me not wearing a mask at all. But it makes you feel better to see me wearing it. And it's a little interesting too, because you can see there's a little bit of either confirmation bias or cognitive dissonance, depending on how it's being laid out. But think about, we're blaming a lot of bars and restaurants right now because people are getting sick and they're getting spread there. Well, I don't know about you, but the places I'm going, they're actually keeping people separate in restaurants and bars. There's all sorts of crazy rules about all sorts of stuff, the way they're doing everything, and they're sterilizing everything every time. I mean, within a minute of you being up and leaving, they're already there spraying it down and wiping it down. But you go to the supermarket, just go down to the produce aisle and just have a look around. Watch everyone pick up the apple, roll it around their hands, smell it, and put it back, and then grab a different one until they find the perfect apple. No one's coming around Lysol spraying down the apples. It's just not happening. And people are ignoring the arrows on the aisle saying, go this way so we can social distance. Either they're not noticing them. Go through a self-checkout. Is someone coming in right behind you and wiping down that keypad that you just touched, that the person before you touched and the person before them touched? No. The reason why we're blaming the bars and the restaurants is because they're the only ones that are being required to keep track of who's in their establishment, for how long, and all sorts of stuff like that. They even have time limits at most of these places, and curfews, because obviously you're less likely to get sick before 9:30 p.m. Or if you're sitting down, you don't need a mask. Talking with your buddies. Now, I understand the idea that's being done here, and I understand the argument that we need grocery shopping. But you're more likely to get sick by eating an apple, or picking up an apple to pick one out, or a watermelon, or anything else, than you are because someone walked past you to use the bathroom at the bar. Now, just my 2 cents. I'll link my articles here that I'm using as my sources. And don't just take my word for it. Form your own opinion. Don't just accept someone else's opinion. Because when you do, that's just saying that this is going to happen forever. Because if you're saying that, for example, the LA Times thing, it says more mask wearing is needed. You're never going to get 100% compliance with anything, ever, with human beings involved. Period. Just will not happen. And if your argument is going to be that we need 100% compliance before this works, then it's going to be forever. And you may as well just admit that you're willing to have an authoritarian takeover at that point, because at this point, you're saying the government should come in and force everyone to do this way, because that's the way I want it done. And even if we have 100% compliance, you're still going to have to pick out the fruit that you want and the produce that you want. You're still going to do the self-checkout and swipe your card, or you're even going to go somewhere else. The ATM, there's no one coming behind you to clean those keys up, is there? And also, keep in mind, not so much keep in mind, but try to take notice. Just notice how often people touch their face, even with their mask on. You don't notice it as much until you try to make an effort to see it, but it's everywhere. And we can say that this makes you feel better, but it's making you sicker.